The blistering late-afternoon sun of a summer day painted the Colorado desert in deep crimson. Emily Parker leaned against her gleaming white Porsche, her small hand trembling as she held her phone, staring helplessly at the words, "No service." More than 30 minutes had slipped by. All around her lay nothing but barren earth and jagged cacti stretching endlessly into the horizon, without a single passing soul. She exhaled in weary resignation, the image of a young, self-made millionaire. Proud, petite, feeling utterly out of place amid the austere, silent wasteland. Suddenly, a slender figure emerged in the dusty distance, walking toward her with quiet but purposeful strides. Emily's heart beat faster, a mixture of curiosity and a flicker of caution racing through her. Under the searing sun, a young black man, Marcus Reed, perhaps 19, approached. He was tall and lean, his deep brown skin gleaming in the sunlight. His faded button-down shirt had its sleeves rolled up well past his elbows, and the simplicity of his attire only highlighted the way his clear, honest eyes seemed to reflect genuine goodwill. Marcus glanced at the luxury car, then turned to Emily with a relaxed, easy smile, as though their meeting were the most ordinary thing in the world. "Looks like you've been stuck out here a while, huh?" Emily furrowed her brow, taken aback by the straightforwardness behind his keen yet friendly gaze. She let a small laugh escape, trying to dispel the awkward tension that had arisen. "Long enough that I could start hating every cactus around here." Marcus chuckled, a crisp, light sound that seemed to cut through the oppressive stillness. "Mind if I check your tire for you?" Emily hesitated for a moment. A stranger in the middle of nowhere. Should she trust him? Yet there was nothing threatening in Marcus's manner, nothing that even hinted at an interest in the expensive car beside them. Finally, she nodded, planting a faint smile on her lips. "Thanks." Marcus dropped a worn backpack onto the ground, unzipping it to reveal a pair of scuffed work gloves and a compact, well-organized toolkit, weathered by years of use. Without a single wasted movement or murmur of complaint, he began inspecting the wheel. Emily stood leaning against the car, her breath catching as she watched him work. There was something almost mesmerizing in the way he moved, gentle, precise, and rhythmic. Beads of sweat glistened on his sun-kissed skin. Stray curls of hair clung to his forehead, lending him an animated, authentic beauty, unlike anything Emily had ever encountered in her polished world. "Do you often help strangers out like this?" Emily finally asked, breaking the silence. Marcus shrugged lightly, still focused on his task. "Every now and then, my uncle owned a repair shop in town, taught me everything before he passed." The simplicity of his words made Emily pause. She stood still, something stirring deep inside her. Admiration, a touch of respect, and something more, an emotion she'd never felt before. Marcus straightened up, brushing a hand across his faded jeans, a warm smile returning to his youthful face. "All done." Emily fumbled into her designer handbag for her wallet, instinctively reaching to reimburse him. But Marcus shook his head, raising a hand in gentle refusal. "Don't worry about it. I'm just glad I happened to pass by at the right moment." She froze, her slender fingers hovering in midair. His genuine refusal startled her even more than his mechanic skills. "You really don't need anything?" Marcus hoisted the backpack onto his shoulder, meeting her with clear, calm eyes. "I've already got everything I need." Those words left Emily speechless. She watched as Marcus walked away, his figure receding down the sun-baked road. Deep inside, she realized that the man who had crossed her path was not just a kind mechanic. He was the first person in her life to refuse her money, to see her simply as another human being, rather than through the lens of her wealth or status. When Marcus Reed disappeared around the bend, Emily's heart brimmed with a strange, newfound feeling, and one name echoed in her mind, one she was certain would reappear many times in her life from that moment onward. As the sun softened and the crimson glow of dusk began to spread across the deserted road, a new journey, one filled with unexpected turns and emotions, unfolded between two people who never imagined they would meet. As Marcus's figure faded around the sun-baked, dusty road, Emily stood motionless for a moment longer, her gaze fixed on the empty horizon as if expecting something or someone to return. The impression Marcus left behind lingered in her mind, both familiar and alien. A strange feeling seeped into her heart and refused to dissipate. That night, back in her family's lavish mansion perched atop an aspen hillside, Emily tried to find the comforting peace this place used to give her. Yet now, everything felt like cold, unfamiliar objects rather than the warm home she once cherished. She stepped onto the balcony, looking down at the Colorado Valley sinking into shadow, her glass of red wine long since gone lukewarm. The gentle moonlight bathed the distant hills in a soft glow, but Emily's heart was a tempest. Images of Marcus replayed relentlessly in her mind, the rough, calloused hands stained with grease, his calm gaze unfazed by the gleaming Porsche. The more she recalled him, the more she realized that her previous life seemed to have lost all meaning. She remembered a moment 3 weeks ago in the grand boardroom of Parker Industries. That instant felt like a blade stabbing into her pride and dignity. Richard Donovan, the company's vice chairman, someone her father had once trusted implicitly, stood, ice in his eyes and cruelty in his tone, and declared, "Emily, the board deeply appreciates everything you've contributed. But now, the company needs a leader with more experience and greater influence. This is meant to be a smooth, benevolent transfer of power." Emily's bitter laugh echoed in her mind as she recalled the words smooth and benevolent. In reality, it was a cleverly staged charade. Richard had quietly rallied the entire board against her in order to seize control of the company her father had built from scratch. Everyone in the room looked away, as though she were a pitiful failure, and all her years of dedication had suddenly become meaningless. Richard Donovan, once an unassuming junior employee whom her father had mentored, had become the coldest traitor imaginable. His gray eyes, meticulously groomed salt-and-pepper hair, and every gesture conveyed arrogance and power. He never bothered to hide his ambition, which far outweighed any loyalty to the Parker family. Yet Emily had never imagined he would go so far as to oust her, the very daughter of the man who had given him everything. Emily's jaw clenched, her anger mingling with profound hurt as she recognized that the world she had always called home was ready to turn its back on her the moment she lost her advantage. But what hurt her most was the realization of her own role. She had spent her youth chasing an idealized image, running to keep pace with her family's and society's expectations, only to find that when everything fell apart, she had nothing left but loneliness. The moonlight illuminated Emily's beautiful face, tears streaming down without her noticing. She lifted her gaze to the night sky, whispering to the heavens, "Dad, where did I go wrong? Why did it all have to end like this?" In that moment of despair, Marcus's image returned to her, vivid and achingly real. Marcus, the young stranger, had shown her through a simple act of kindness that there was another world out there, one where a person's value is measured not by bank account balances or social status, but by sincerity, compassion, and humility. Marcus's genuine simplicity acted as a mirror, reflecting all the superficiality Emily had been accustomed to since childhood. For the first time in her life, She recognized that she'd been caught in a hollow, glittering existence. Emily managed a tearful smile, bitterly acknowledging that it took a profound betrayal from those closest to her for her to truly see herself. Late into the night, her phone buzzed incessantly with messages. She glanced at the screen and saw texts from investors, a few high society friends she'd once counted on, even a feigned concern message from Richard Donovan. She ignored them all, refusing to read or respond. To her, that world had lost all genuine meaning. In the hush of the mansion, Emily gently closed the balcony door and went into her large but frigid bedroom. Lying in her familiar bed, her mind still racing, she whispered to herself, "Marcus, thank you for coming into my life and reminding me that I can choose my own path again." Eventually, sleep came at last, but Emily knew that her life would never be the same. And perhaps that change would begin with the impression Marcus had inadvertently carved into her soul, a shadow that would not easily fade. Before the first light of dawn could wash over the distant hills, Emily was already awake, her mind still haunted by Marcus's image. All through the night, her sleep had been fitful and broken, torn between wandering thoughts and a powerful restlessness. In Emily's mind, only one clear, unwavering decision remained. She needed to go back to the spot where they had met, even though she didn't fully understand what she was hoping to find. She quickly slipped into her simplest clothes, shedding the luxury brands she normally wore like armor against the world's gaze. A soft white button-down shirt, a pair of lightly dust-covered jeans, and the old sneakers she'd stashed away in her closet long ago suddenly seemed perfectly suited to this journey. The white Porsche purred to life under her, but Emily's heart felt heavy with anticipation. She kept wondering what might be waiting for her up ahead: rejection, distance, or the truth she'd been avoiding all this time. Along the familiar stretch of road, the morning light brought the landscape to life in a way she'd never noticed before. The road was quiet, but it didn't feel lonely like the last time she'd been here. A mix of anxiety and hope grew stronger as she neared the old meeting spot. Emily's eyes searched for the familiar silhouette of the young man with calloused hands and clear, honest eyes, the one who had completely upended her thoughts. She passed the old gas station, went by the rickety wooden fences, and finally stopped when she caught sight of Marcus in the distance. Her pulse quickened as she eased the car to a gentle stop on the side of the road, stepping out as softly as if she feared even a whisper might shatter the beautiful image before her. Marcus was standing on a weathered ladder, his curly hair damp with sweat, carefully repairing the old wooden porch of his elderly neighbor's faded little house. His movements were deliberate and precise, each hammer strike sure and confident, and he seemed completely unaware of Emily's presence. Seeing him like this made Emily's heart pound with equal parts surprise and delight. A warm feeling spread through her chest that was unlike any emotion she'd ever experienced. "Marcus, you've got company," the old woman called out from below, her voice gentle and kind as she smiled up at him. Marcus turned in surprise. The moment their eyes met, Emily caught a flicker of astonishment mixed with a hint of embarrassment in his gaze, but he quickly settled into his characteristic, calm smile. "Emily, I didn't think I'd see you again so soon." "I didn't think I would either," Emily replied softly, her nervous excitement making her feel like a teenage girl meeting her crush for the first time. "I was just passing by and wanted to see if you were here." She stumbled to find the most reasonable explanation for her sudden appearance. Marcus climbed down from the ladder, brushing a hand against his jeans, his eyes curious yet warm. "Is the car okay?" "Better than ever, thanks to you," Emily answered quickly, as if afraid he might vanish again. "But I never properly thanked you. If you don't mind, I'd like to buy you a coffee, to say thank you." Marcus studied her for a long moment, his clear eyes seeming to search for something deep in her heart. Finally, he shrugged, still wearing that gentle, easygoing smile. "Sure, as long as you don't try to pay me back again." Emily laughed out loud, the tension instantly slipping away. She realized there was something uniquely comforting about Marcus's presence, something that let her forget the heavy pressures that had been haunting her until now. He exchanged a few quiet words with the old woman, then walked with Emily back toward the car, which was parked just a short distance away. During that brief walk, Emily discreetly observed Marcus. She noticed the simple joy shining in his eyes and the natural ease in his manner, which eased her worry that she might be acting too awkwardly. This genuine, down-to-earth feeling was something she had never experienced with any man in the glossy, privileged world she lived in. Emily understood clearly in that moment that this meeting wasn't just about thanking him for fixing her tire. It was the first step toward breaking down the barriers between their completely different worlds, and it marked the beginning of a friendship Emily could never have anticipated. When they stopped beside the Porsche, Emily opened her car door and looked deeply into Marcus's eyes, sincerity shining in her own. "Marcus, have you ever felt that a complete stranger could somehow feel incredibly familiar?" Marcus blinked in surprise for a moment, then returned her gaze with a gentle smile, and answered earnestly, "Now I have." Emily grinned, a simple, pure happiness flowing into her heart like a cool stream. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly lighter, and she believed without a doubt that no matter what the future held, today's reunion would mark the start of a special journey neither of them would ever forget. Marcus hesitated for a moment, but Emily's sincere look and gentle smile made it impossible for him to refuse. The woman standing before him was no longer an affluent stranger, but a genuine companion seeking something real in a world full of skepticism. "I'd be glad to," Marcus replied softly, a bit shy but earnest. They stepped into a small cafe tucked away on a quiet street corner. The space was simple yet cozy, with its soft cream-colored walls and warm yellow lighting. Emily chose a secluded spot by the window so they could talk in peace. She sat down, her heart still racing. Marcus took a seat opposite her, his eyes both cautious and curious. "I'm honestly surprised you came back," Marcus began gently, a faint smile crossing his lips even as his gaze remained serious. Emily looked down at the cup of strong black coffee that had just been brought over and took a deep breath, as if summoning the courage to start their conversation. "I'm not entirely sure why I came back, but I knew I had to see you again." Marcus fell silent for a moment, then spoke slowly, his voice tinged with melancholy. "You know, I've gotten used to people passing through my life and then disappearing. Very few actually stop like you did." Marcus's genuine words made Emily's chest tighten with empathy. She replied softly, her voice full of understanding. "I get that, even if it sounds hard to believe. The truth is, I always assumed I was surrounded by plenty of people, but only when I faced trouble did I realize no one was really on my side." Marcus looked at Emily, his eyes carrying a distant sadness. "My parents split up when I was only 8. My dad drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and my mom left because she couldn't bear the poverty anymore. I grew up with my aunt. She wasn't wealthy, but she taught me to live with self-respect and love. But you know, prejudice is everywhere out there." Emily sat quietly, listening, her eyes growing deeper with sympathy. She had never imagined someone as strong and composed as Marcus had carried such wounds. She gently asked, voice soft as though afraid to hurt him further, "Did that make you keep your distance from the world?" Marcus nodded slightly, looking directly into Emily's eyes as if he wanted to share everything. I learned to keep people at arm's length to avoid getting hurt. Every time I walk into a room, I feel like people are judging me just because of my skin color or my background. A comfortable silence settled between them. Not one of discomfort, but of two people who truly understood each other's hearts. Emily felt her own barriers dissolve. You know, I felt something similar, only I was defined by what I had. When I lost my CEO position at the company my father built, all the people I thought were my friends turned their backs. In their eyes, I was nothing but a failure. Marcus looked at Emily in surprise, a bit taken aback but full of empathy. I didn't think you'd gone through that. Emily offered a bittersweet smile, her voice dropping as though confessing a secret she'd never shared with anyone before. You just don't know, Marcus. Growing up in a world that demands perfection means that if you stumble even once, everything vanishes like a dream. And the saddest part is, that's when I realized I never really had anything truly valuable. Marcus's eyes filled with understanding. He gently placed his hand on the table as a sincere gesture of comfort. Emily, maybe the real valuable thing you've found is recognizing what you truly need in life. In that moment, a tender emotion passed between them. Two people from opposite worlds had been brought together by an understanding of past losses. Wounds that once felt insurmountable had become a bridge, drawing them closer. Emily nodded slowly, her eyes shining with renewed faith and hope. Maybe you're right, Marcus. I'm really lucky to have met you, because you reminded me that there are still good things in this world. Marcus smiled warmly, his gaze radiating the rare peace Emily had been longing for. Their cups of coffee sat cooling on the table, but neither seemed to care. Between them, an invisible bond had formed, far beyond mere chance. A genuine friendship with the power to transform both their lives in the days to come. A warm silence lingered between them as Emily stared deeply into Marcus's eyes, as though seeking agreement, or at least understanding, for what she was about to say. She gently picked up the now cold cup of coffee in front of her, twirling it in her hand, her heart full of emotion. Marcus, she began, her voice soft but resolute, ever since I lost everything I thought was most important, I've realized I have the chance to start something far more meaningful. I think I want to do something truly worthwhile. Marcus's eyebrows knitted together in curiosity, his gaze growing more focused and serious. What do you mean, Emily? Taking a steadying breath, Emily's eyes lit up with passionate conviction as she shared her vision. I want to open a community center. A place where young people from difficult backgrounds, those who've been forgotten by society, can learn trades and vital life skills. Not just to earn a living, but to live with dignity, just like your aunt taught you. Marcus leaned back slightly in his chair, skepticism flickering across his features. Memories of empty promises and flashy but hollow charity projects he'd witnessed in the past must have been surfacing. His tone grew cautious, though still gentle. Emily, I appreciate your idea, but are you sure this is what you really want to do, and not just a way to soothe your own guilt or sense of loss? Emily froze at his pointed question, her expression momentarily wounded, before hardening with unbreakable resolve. She looked Marcus in the eye, speaking now with unwavering strength. I understand why you'd doubt me, Marcus, but I'm not doing this just to feel better about myself. I'm doing it because I was once a victim of a cold, superficial world, where people only judged each other by possessions and status. I want to build a place where everyone is treated with respect and given a genuine opportunity to rise above their circumstances. Marcus fell silent, staring into the earnest depths of Emily's eyes. He sensed a genuine fire burning in her heart, something he recognized all too well. A young person who once yearned for a chance, who'd been turned away by the indifferent world. His voice softened, full of cautious sincerity. "Do you really think someone like me can help you?" Emily offered a gentle yet determined smile, placing her small hand on the table, then leaning it toward Marcus's calloused one. "Marcus, it's not just about helping me. I believe you're the one who can truly help young people like you were. You understand them better than anyone else." Marcus looked up, meeting Emily's gaze again. In her eyes he saw only sincerity and burning enthusiasm. His doubts that had shadowed him began to fade in the face of her honesty. After a long pause, he nodded, his voice steadier now. "I'm not sure how far we can take this, but I want to try. I want to trust you, Emily." A radiant smile spread across Emily's face, her heart soaring at his agreement. This was more than just a promise of collaboration. It was the moment their two very different worlds discovered common ground through empathy and shared purpose. "Marcus, I promise you," she said with unwavering conviction, "we'll make this work. Not for fame or profit, but because it's worth every effort we put in." Marcus returned a genuine, relaxed smile, the first one he'd fully offered all day, and nodded. "All right, Emily, I trust you." Outside the cafe window, the soft glow of the late afternoon sun bathed them in warm golden light, heralding a hopeful future ahead. Two people, each with a past full of hurt, had found unity in a meaningful mission. And as Emily and Marcus stepped out of that little cafe, they both knew their lives would never be the same. This was just the beginning of a long, challenging, and ultimately beautiful journey to build something truly authentic and meaningful, something they had never dared to imagine before. That evening, when Emily invited Marcus to accompany her to her family's party at their lavish Aspen mansion, Marcus hesitated briefly. However, Emily's trusting eyes and gentle smile made it impossible for him to say no. But as the luxury car swept through the grand gate into the glittering estate, Marcus felt an inexplicable unease. Tonight, the Parker mansion gleamed as if coated in gold under the grand chandeliers, reflecting countless expensive outfits worn by the distinguished guests. As Marcus stepped into the large room, he immediately sensed sharp, cold stares passing over him like invisible knives. He could tell at once that he was utterly out of place amid this display of opulence and sophistication. Emily gave his arm a reassuring squeeze and smiled, but Marcus could distinctly feel the tension in that gesture. A few guests quickly approached to greet Emily, barely casting a glance at Marcus, curious, tinged with disdain, and then hurried away as if he wasn't worth their time. Among them, Richard Donovan stood out, a man with salt-and-pepper hair, icy eyes, and a flawless appearance that masked his boundless ambition. He approached Emily, his voice laced with mock politeness. "Emily, I'm surprised to see you back so soon. I thought you were still off somewhere, searching for your new purpose in life." Emily pressed her lips together, determined to keep her composure in the face of his barbed remark. She responded coolly, "Richard, I believe I've found something truly meaningful, something you could never understand." Richard's gaze immediately shifted to Marcus, and a condescending, amused smirk played across his lips. "Oh? So this is your new purpose? Some charity project, or is it just another performance to mollify the public?" Marcus felt a sting in his chest at the implication in Richard's words. He realized he'd become part of the spectacle this elite circle was staging, treated as a mere ornament to bolster the image Emily hoped to build. He straightened, speaking in a low, steady voice filled with resolve. "Excuse me, Mr. Donovan, but I am not a project or someone's decoration. I'm here because I believe in what Emily wants to do." Richard chuckled softly and patted Marcus condescendingly on the shoulder, as if brushing away his sincerity. "Young man, you're very naive if you actually believe in those lofty ideals. I don't think you know her as well as I do." Marcus froze, the unease within him deepening as he noticed the surrounding guests' eyes turning to him, whispering with malicious intent. Under the glaring scrutiny, he felt exposed, stripped bare before their hidden ridicule. He searched for protection or a strong rebuttal from Emily, but she was now surrounded by a group of wealthy women, their polite smiles masking a challenging undertone. "Dear Emily," one cold blonde woman remarked, "is this how you're staging your little rebellion? Quite the novelty, isn't it?" Emily shot Marcus a hesitant glance, but her silence lingered long enough for him to realize she was torn. Anger flared within Marcus. He felt used, just a pawn in Emily's attempt to prove something to those who had once cast her aside. For the first time, he doubted Emily's sincerity, wondering whether he was simply a tool in her larger game. Turning away, he strode quickly out onto the quiet terrace, furious tears pressing behind his eyes. The calm outside stood in stark contrast to the raucous party he'd just left. Marcus breathed deeply, striving for composure but finding none. He felt more deeply wounded than he ever had before. Behind him, Emily rushed out, placing a trembling hand on his shoulder. "Marcus, I'm sorry. I didn't think it would play out like this." Marcus turned back, his eyes colder and more hurt than they had ever been. "Emily, I trusted you. But now I have to wonder, do you truly want to help people? Or are you just using me as a tool to restore your status in their eyes?" Emily froze at Marcus's harsh words. She tried to explain herself, but her voice faltered in powerlessness. "No, Marcus, you have to believe me. I never meant to use you. I genuinely want to build something of real value with you." Marcus looked straight into Emily's eyes, his voice subdued but resolute. "If that's what you really think, why did you stay silent when they mocked me? Why didn't you stand up and defend your own ideals in front of them?" Emily stood speechless, unable to answer. Marcus shook his head in disappointment and walked away from the mansion grounds. As his figure receded into the night, Emily remained alone in the stillness, her heart heavy with regret and profound sorrow. Inside, the music continued to play merrily, and laughter and clinking glasses went on as though nothing had happened. But Emily knew she had just lost the trust of the only person who had truly believed in the good she meant to do. And she realized that, from now on, reclaiming Marcus's faith would be far more difficult than she had ever imagined. As Marcus's figure faded into the silent night, Emily remained rooted in the family's meticulously tended rose garden, her heart twisting with disappointment and humiliation. Lights from inside the mansion still spilled onto the lawn, but a cold feeling seeped into her bones, chilling her with every breath. A familiar icy voice, laced with triumph, broke the oppressive silence behind her. "I told you, Emily, people like that only make you look more foolish." Emily whirled around, her eyes blazing as they met Richard Donovan's calm, mocking face. Now he no longer masked his ambition or his contempt for Marcus. In his gaze gleamed a malicious satisfaction as he watched Emily's pain. "Why are you doing this, Richard?" Emily asked, her voice trembling but resolute, fury evident in every syllable. Richard chuckled softly, his cold eyes gleaming with enjoyment. "Emily, do you really think you can use some flashy charity project and a poor guy to restore your image after you were pushed out of the company? Are you that naive?" Emily clenched her fists so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Each of Richard's cruel words felt like a dagger to her pride. She realized he had orchestrated this entire scenario, using the lavish party as a trap to render her powerless and humiliated. "I never intended to exploit Marcus," Emily ground out, striving to control her anger. "But you wouldn't hesitate to use anyone to get what you want, even betraying my father." Richard shrugged casually, unfazed by her accusation. "Your father was a great leader, but his time has long passed. I'm just helping the company grow stronger. I won't let it fall into the hands of some inexperienced, gullible young woman." Emily's eyes flared with anger, but she also felt a pang of helplessness. She realized that her hesitation and silence earlier had hurt Marcus more deeply than anything else. She blamed herself for allowing him to be wounded in such a painful way, and she wondered if she had indeed, however unintentionally, used him to reclaim her own standing. Unable to bear it any longer, Emily turned her back and hurried out of the garden, rushing toward the main gate, desperately searching for Marcus. In the vast, silent expanse, Marcus's anguished voice echoed in her mind like a clear accusation. "If you truly believed in what you were doing, why did you stay silent while they mocked me? Why didn't you stand up for your own ideals in front of them?" Tears began to stream down Emily's cheeks. For the first time, she fully understood her own weakness, that her fear of losing reputation and social status had controlled her actions and caused her to lose the only person who had ever truly believed in and understood her. She stood alone in the darkness, staring down the long drive leading out of the mansion, the path Marcus had just taken, her heart heavy with regret and pain. Emily knew that, this time, she had made a profound mistake. She had failed to courageously defend both her ideals and the person she cared about most. The night around her felt heavier, pressing down on her heart with stinging accusations and deep wounds. Emily realized there was no turning back. To make amends, she would have to prove that Marcus's words were wrong, that she had never meant to use him as a tool. But would Marcus still believe her? A cold breeze swept across the garden, and Emily shivered, from both the chill and the overwhelming loneliness. In that moment, she understood more clearly than ever that, to win back Marcus's trust, she had no choice but to confront herself and rediscover the honesty she had hidden behind status and prejudice. With that resolve, Emily slowly turned and walked back into the grand mansion. From now on, she vowed, she would never let herself be powerless again. She would fight for her beliefs and for what truly mattered. Above all, to be worthy of the faith Marcus once placed in her. In the days following that fateful party, Emily was consumed by guilt and deep reflection. She realized that not only had she lost Marcus's trust, but she had nearly lost herself. Marcus's harsh questions haunted her like knives cutting into her mind each time she closed her eyes. Emily avoided everyone, withdrawing into her spacious, cold bedroom, trying to sort through the chaos of her emotions. She understood that if she didn't soon confront her mistake, she would forever lose the most precious thing she had ever found, Marcus's genuine faith in her. Then, one bright morning, Emily decided to get up, put on the simplest clothes she owned, and drive to the small woodworking shop where Marcus worked. Throughout the drive, her heart raced with a mix of fear and hope. She didn't know how Marcus would react, but she knew she needed to explain everything. The little carpentry shop sat peacefully on a quiet street, among modest homes. Emily stepped out of her car, her heart pounding as she saw Marcus intently refinishing an old wooden table, his hands moving nimbly and confidently. The sight made her realize that Marcus found peace in the simplest tasks, so different from the glamorous world she had known. Marcus looked up at the sound of footsteps. His eyes briefly flashed with surprise, but quickly hardened with caution. Emily walked forward, her voice trembling but determined. "Marcus, I know I'm probably the last person you want to see right now, but I really need to talk to you. I owe you a sincere apology." Marcus set down his polishing cloth and was silent for a long moment before responding in a calm, somewhat distant tone. "Emily, I'm not sure you have anything left to say. I thought I could trust you, but maybe I was mistaken." Emily felt her heart tighten at Marcus's coldness, but she understood that it was the natural result of her own silence and weakness. She stepped closer, looking him straight in the eyes, and spoke slowly and clearly. "Marcus, you have every right to be angry, and I fully deserve your coldness. But believe me, I never intended to use you as a pawn to repair my image in anyone's eyes. That night, I was simply too weak and afraid. I was afraid of losing acceptance from the people I once thought mattered most." Marcus watched her, his gaze still stern but softening as he detected the genuine remorse in her voice. He sighed, his eyes reflecting deep hurt. "Emily, do you have any idea what it feels like to be mocked and scorned? I've experienced that my entire life. But that feeling is even more painful when the person you trusted most stays silent in the face of that ridicule." Emily nodded softly, her voice shaky with emotion. "I know I was wrong, Marcus. I failed when I didn't stand up for you, but that was the biggest mistake I've ever made, and I swear I will never make it again." Marcus studied her for a long moment, and his expression gradually softened. He could clearly sense that Emily was speaking from the bottom of her heart. After a brief silence, he spoke again, his voice deeper and more sincere. "Emily, you know, I've been thinking a lot these past few days. I've wondered if I was overly sensitive, if my past wounds caused me to doubt any good intentions someone might have toward me." Emily took a small step closer, her eyes shining with hope. "Marcus, you're not wrong for doubting. But I want you to know I'm not here to beg for pity. I'm here to prove that I genuinely want to do something meaningful with you. I no longer care about fame or status. I only care that we can create something truly good together." Marcus gave a faint smile, so subtle but enough to warm Emily's heart. He nodded slowly, his tone much softer. "Emily, I don't know how far we'll go from here, but I think we can give each other, give ourselves another chance, because despite everything, I still believe that you truly can do good things." Emily felt as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She smiled through her tears, grateful and moved. She understood that between them, sincere understanding had replaced their previous doubts and pain. They stood quietly in the small woodworking shop, but the distance between them was gone. Now, they shared a new belief and a deep empathy born from their wounds. Emily spoke softly, her voice full of determination. "Marcus, please give me a chance to prove that this time I will never let you face prejudice and doubt on your own again." Marcus looked at her and offered the most genuine smile he had shown anyone in a long time. "I trust you, Emily. I truly trust you." In that moment, as the morning sun flooded the shop, they both knew that no matter how difficult the future might be, they would face and overcome it together, because now they were no longer alone. In the days after that emotional conversation at the woodworking shop, Emily found herself in an unprecedented state of uncertainty. She knew that if she truly wanted to prove to Marcus, and to herself, that she would never exploit him, she needed to take the boldest possible action. So, when she received an invitation to speak at the Denver Technology Conference, where powerful investors and media outlets would be gathered, Emily accepted without hesitation. That day, the conference hall was ablaze with bright lights, cameras all trained on the stage where Emily Parker, once stripped of her role as CEO of Parker Industries, was about to appear. Whispers and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some were curious, others skeptical. None of them knew what Emily planned to say. Marcus sat quietly in the back row, avoiding the curious stares of those around him. He didn't fully understand why Emily insisted he be there, but the sincerity in her voice and eyes made it impossible for him to refuse. Backstage, Emily took a deep breath, adjusted the lapel mic, and then stepped into the spotlight. Every eye in the room zeroed in on her, faces both familiar and unfamiliar, some of her former supporters, others who had turned their backs on her. Everyone was waiting to see what Emily Parker would do next. Emily glanced at the prepared notes on the podium, then suddenly smiled, folded them, and set them aside. Her gaze settled on the back row where Marcus was sitting, watching her with evident concern. Her voice rang out, gentle yet firm, in the hushed auditorium. "I am not here today to talk about numbers or business strategies. I am here to speak about something far more important." A quiet ripple of surprise spread across the audience. Investors and journalists exchanged looks, sensing that something entirely different was unfolding. For a long time, I lost everything this society deems most important: power, status, respect. But when all of that vanished, I discovered something infinitely more valuable. Emily continued, her voice growing stronger and more resolute. The audience fell completely silent, drawn in by the genuine conviction of her words. She looked directly at Marcus, her eyes brimming with sincerity and courage. "I found someone who taught me what honesty and kindness are, someone who helped me understand that our true worth is never measured by material possessions." Marcus's eyes widened in surprise. He sat up straighter, his heart racing as he realized exactly what Emily was about to say. Around him, soft murmurs of curiosity and skepticism began to spread, all directed at him. On stage, Emily lifted her head high, her voice full of pride and determination. "That person is Marcus Reed, and today, in front of all of you, I want to say that I love him. I love Marcus. Not because of his background or status, but because of his honesty, strength, and courage, and I am willing to give up everything I have to protect this genuine love." The hall erupted in astonished murmurs. Cameras flashed non-stop, and countless stunned expressions registered in the crowd. Richard Donovan, seated in the front row, went pale with shock and anger. He realized in that moment that Emily's declaration meant she was completely relinquishing any chance of returning to the company or reclaiming power. Marcus stared at the stage, his eyes filled with emotion and surprise. He couldn't believe Emily had dared to declare her feelings for him so publicly, knowing it could cost her every ounce of reputation and prestige in this glamorous world. His heart clenched with gratitude and disbelief. This was the first time he understood clearly and deeply how genuinely Emily felt for him. Emily took a deep breath, her eyes blazing with conviction as she concluded her heartfelt speech. "I know many of you will oppose and mock my decision, but I do not care because I have found what truly matters most in my life. Marcus, thank you for giving me the chance to recognize my own true worth." She stepped away from the podium to scattered applause mixed with shocked looks, but Emily paid no mind. She walked quickly down from the stage, heading straight for Marcus, her eyes alight with fierce confidence. Marcus rose to meet her, looking deeply into her eyes and breaking into a heartfelt, proud smile. Amid the murmurs and judgmental stares of everyone around them, Emily saw only Marcus. and now she knew for certain that she had made the right choice. Somewhere in the corner of the auditorium, Richard Donovan clenched his jaw, his gaze burning with bitter hostility. He told himself that this battle was far from over, that Emily would pay dearly for her rebellion, but Emily no longer feared anything, because she had discovered a new kind of strength, the strength of genuine love, transcending all superficiality and prejudice. Just a few hours after Emily's shock declaration at the conference, her world seemed to explode. Sensational headlines flooded every news site and social media feed, from provocative titles to vicious commentary, all zeroing in on the event Emily had courageously revealed to the public. The media seized the opportunity to ignite fierce debates. Top business newspapers ran mocking headlines such as "Emily Parker, from powerful CEO to fairy tale figure," and even more scathing, "Emily Parker abandons family empire for a carpenter, romantic or reckless." Each article, each news blurb felt like a dagger aimed at Emily, reminding her of the price she would pay for honesty and courage. Richard Donovan quickly capitalized on the moment to attack Emily. In a calculated television interview, he said coldly, "We regret Emily's decision, but clearly she is no longer sane enough to hold such an important leadership role. Parker Industries needs someone with the level-headedness to separate work from personal life." Richard's words landed like heavy blows to Emily's pride, publicly cast her out of the world she once belonged to. Major investors, no longer hesitating, pulled their funding from the projects Emily had built, forcing her to realize she was facing a genuine financial crisis. Friends she had regarded as confidants in high society turned their backs on her, stopped calling, and refused to answer messages as if terrified of being tainted by the biggest scandal in the business world's recent memory. Each time Emily received a notice of an emergency meeting called by Richard to officially erase every trace of her from the company, her heart ached. She had thought she'd prepared herself, but when confronted with the cold ruthlessness of the very world she once identified with, the hurt ran deeper than she had ever imagined. However, amid that fierce storm of public opinion, Emily discovered something unexpected and beautiful. Alongside the criticism and mockery, she began receiving countless heartfelt messages from ordinary people. People she'd never met but who felt a deep empathy for her bravery and her choice. One evening, as Emily sat silently in front of her computer screen, Marcus came in quietly and handed her a stack of handwritten letters. Surprised, she asked softly, "Marcus, what are these letters?" Marcus offered her a gentle, proud, emotional smile. "Strangers have been sending letters to the woodworking shop, asking me to give them to you. I thought you should read them." Emily opened the first letter with trembling hands. It was from an elderly woman in a small town in western Colorado, written in simple but heartfelt handwriting. "Dear Emily, I don't know you, but I want to say you did something truly courageous. You proved that genuine love still exists, no matter what people say." The next letters carried the same message. One came from a former service member who wrote, "I used to think there was no one left in this world brave enough to give up everything for what's right. Thank you for showing me I was wrong." A 12-year-old girl in Detroit penned, "Miss Emily, my brother tells me I'll never become an engineer because I'm a girl, but after hearing your story, I know I can do it." Each letter felt like a small ray of sunlight piercing through the darkness, illuminating the path Emily was walking on. She realized that while she had been cast aside by those who once valued her only for her fame and wealth, she had gained genuine empathy from countless strangers, people who valued her courage and the authentic love she had boldly displayed to the world. Marcus placed his warm hand on her shoulder and softly said, "Emily, do you see? You are not alone in your decision. This is the real value you've found. Emily looked up at Marcus, her eyes shining with new hope and determination. She nodded and gave him the brightest smile she had managed since the storm began. "You're right, Marcus. I have no regrets. I made the right choice because now I truly understand my own worth." Outside, the maelstrom of public opinion continued. Mockery and attacks still came in waves. But Emily no longer felt afraid. She realized that amid the coldness of a world obsessed with prestige, she had discovered a completely different source of strength. Genuine love, and the understanding of ordinary people who know that a person's real value is never measured by reputation or wealth. From this moment on, Emily Parker would live not just for herself. She was determined to stand up and fight for those who believed in her authenticity, and to show everyone that her choice had been absolutely right, a choice worth defending with everything she had. Among the hundreds of letters that poured in, there was one small envelope with messy handwriting and frayed edges that caught Emily's attention more than any other. Gently, Emily opened the envelope, and her heart skipped a beat as she read the shaky but determined lines written by a girl barely 12 years old. "Dear Miss Emily," the letter began in a heartfelt, sincere tone. "My name is Mia, and I live in a small neighborhood in Detroit. I am writing to you because last night my mom told me about your story on television. She said that you gave up everything for something you truly believe in." Emily felt her vision blur as she continued reading the next lines. "I have never met you, but I want you to know that you have become my hero. At school, many of my classmates tease me because of my skin color. They say I will never be able to do anything of value. But after hearing your story, I realized that what other people say doesn't matter. What matters is that I believe in myself." Each simple sentence from this young girl washed over Emily's heart like a wave of emotion. For the first time since the storm of public opinion began, Emily felt a fierce validation of the path she had chosen. She realized clearly that no matter what the rest of the world said, her actions had genuinely touched the hearts of people like Mia, those who quietly fight prejudice and discrimination every day. Marcus stood by the doorway, silently watching Emily. He stepped closer and gently placed his hand on her shoulder, noticing the tears of emotion rolling down her face. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked softly. Emily looked up at him, her eyes shining with an uncommon resolve. "Marcus, reading these words, I now understand exactly how much what we're doing truly matters. This is why we must never give up." Marcus glanced at the letter, his own gaze growing deeper than ever. He understood the emotions Emily was experiencing, because he too had once been a child like Mia, growing up subjected to countless criticisms and doubts from those around him. "I know exactly how Mia feels," Marcus said quietly, his voice low and full of deep empathy. "I used to think that nobody could change the world around me. But you taught me that as long as you have enough courage, anyone can make a difference." Emily offered a small smile and clasped Marcus's hand in hers. The warmth of his palm filled her with a profound strength. "We're not doing this just for us anymore, Marcus. We're doing it for Mia, and for everyone who needs a glimmer of hope to get through the darkness out there." Over the following days, the two of them threw themselves back into the community center project with more determination than ever. They no longer paid attention to the harsh criticism from the media or the cold indifference of those who once called themselves friends. Their sole focus was building a genuinely helpful place for young people, where kids like Mia could find confidence, hope, and the strength to rise again. But at the Parker Industries headquarters, Richard Donovan had not given up on his plan to ensure Emily's complete downfall. He sat in his dimly lit office, his cold, predatory eyes fixed on a video of Emily's confession at the conference. His arrogant voice echoed through the empty room. Emily, you think you can win with a few tear-jerking speeches and your cheap love story? I will show you that this world never forgives weakness. Immediately, Richard picked up the phone and placed a series of calls to the remaining investors, pressuring them not only to withdraw funding entirely, but also to find any way possible to destroy Emily's and Marcus's reputations. To Richard, Emily's success with the community center project would be an unacceptable failure, and he was determined not to let it happen. Back with Emily and Marcus, they were still blissfully unaware of Richard's secret machinations. They were fully absorbed in planning the groundbreaking ceremony for the project, their hearts brimming with new hope and faith. Emily proudly displayed Mia's letter on the project's central bulletin board, a constant reminder that their efforts held profound meaning and truly touched other people's lives. Amid the challenges that lay ahead, Emily and Marcus understood more clearly than ever that they were on the right path, a path filled with difficulty but also with purpose, a path they were both willing to sacrifice everything to protect. And deep in her heart, Emily made a powerful vow to herself. She would never betray Mia's faith, or the faith of others like her, who had entrusted their hope to her courage. For their sake, she would stand firm and fight to the very end. With the newly ignited confidence from Mia's letter, Emily and Marcus poured all their passion into building the dream they had been pursuing together. The Parker and Reed Institute. The name was simple but carried deep meaning, symbolizing the harmony between two people from completely different worlds who now shared one goal, one ideal. Right from the groundbreaking day, nothing was easy. The meager funds remaining after investors abruptly pulled out forced Emily and Marcus to handle nearly every task themselves. Marcus took charge of constructing the facility, his calloused hands transforming lumber and bricks into warm, sturdy rooms day after day. Emily worked alongside him, no longer the fragile girl of her past. She rolled up her sleeves, carried each brick herself, mixed every can of paint without complaint. Every evening, even after dark, the two of them refused to leave the construction site. A small yellow work light illuminated their dust-covered faces, each one shining with fierce determination. Though they often felt exhausted and worn out, just looking into each other's eyes and remembering Mia's heartfelt words reminded them that everything they were doing was truly worthwhile. Meanwhile, outside their world, Richard Donovan's scheme to sabotage their project intensified. He knew that if this center succeeded, Emily's reputation could be revived, posing a significant threat to the position he had painstakingly built at Parker Industries. He began spreading malicious rumors to destroy Emily's and Marcus's credibility across newspapers and social media, calling the project a ridiculous charade and the hopeless effort of a fallen heir. One afternoon, Marcus angrily slammed a newspaper onto a table after reading a vicious article orchestrated by Richard. "Emily, Donovan is going way too far. We can't just let him get away with this." Emily walked over, gently taking his hand. Her voice was calm but brimming with determination. "Marcus, we can't control what Richard does. The only thing we can do is prove to him that his hateful words cannot shake our will and resolve." Marcus looked deeply into Emily's eyes and recognized the strength and courage in a girl who had once been judged as weak and naive. He nodded and squeezed her hand in solidarity. "You're right, Emily. We will not let him, or anyone, shake our faith anymore." In the days that followed, Emily and Marcus devoted all their energy to the project. They met with every community member, rallied support from small businesses and local residents, everything from building materials to study supplies and books. Gradually, local people, especially the youth, began to volunteer with genuine enthusiasm and admiration. Meanwhile, Richard grew increasingly frantic as he saw the community rallying behind Emily. He repeatedly called the remaining partners, using his power and influence to force them to sever any ties to Emily's project. One afternoon, Richard personally came to the site, standing outside and looking in with a cold, mocking stare. "Miss Parker, it's a shame you're wasting your time on a meaningless project like this. Do you really think a few makeshift walls can change anything?" Emily met Richard's icy gaze without flinching, her voice ringing with conviction. "Mr. Donovan, you may consider this a joke or a waste of time. But for us, this is a real dream, and I assure you, nothing you say or do can stop us." Richard laughed scornfully, turned on his heel, and walked away, his voice echoing provocatively. "Keep dreaming your little dream, Emily. Soon you'll realize that this world isn't made for dreamers." After Richard left, Marcus approached Emily with a warm, reassuring tone. "Don't let him affect you. We know what we're doing is right, and that's what matters." Emily offered a faint smile, her gaze stronger and more determined than ever. "Marcus, I'm not afraid of him anymore, because now I have you, and we have a whole community standing behind us." The final days of construction were filled with energy and hope. Scenes of Marcus teaching local youths how to build walls and assemble desks, and of Emily showing them how to use computers or manage basic finances, became deeply moving moments. The laughter of the young people and their bright, hopeful eyes made Emily and Marcus even more certain that they had made the right choice. On the day the project was completed, as Emily hung the Parker and Reed Institute sign above the entrance gate, tears of quiet joy and pride streamed down her face. Marcus stood beside her, his strong arms embracing her with love and pride. "We did it, Emily, and this is just the beginning." Emily looked up at the new sign and nodded firmly. "Yes, Marcus. This is only the beginning of something even more amazing that we're building." The two of them stood there before the facility they had toiled to create, fully aware that challenges still awaited them. But now they no longer felt fear, because they understood that as long as they believed in each other and in their dream, nothing would be impossible. As the sun rose higher, bathing the Parker and Reed Institute sign in brilliant golden light, Emily and Marcus knew that the most important day of their lives had arrived. Members of the local community, people of every age, race, and background, had gathered early, eager to witness the moment when the center would officially open its doors. Emily stood quietly to the side, her heart swelling as she watched Marcus step onto the small stage set up in front of the institute. Today, the man who had faced so many prejudices and wounds in his life stood tall, his eyes shining with confidence, ready to share his story with everyone present. Marcus scanned the audience, taking in the sincere faces of people ranging from elderly seniors with gray hair to hopeful teenagers. He inhaled deeply, then began speaking in a warm yet powerful voice. "Today, I stand here not only to celebrate the opening of this center, but to share with you a story about my own life." The crowd fell silent, listening intently as Marcus continued with total honesty. "I grew up in a poor neighborhood where prejudice and discrimination were constant in my daily life. I was looked down upon and doubted simply because of my skin color and where I came from. There were times I believed I would be forever trapped by those biases." Marcus paused briefly, making eye contact with people in the audience before continuing with even greater pride and conviction. "But then, I met someone who changed everything. A woman who had the courage to give up all her privileges and wealth to step into my world simply because she believed everyone deserves a chance. That person is Emily Parker." Marcus's gaze softened as he looked at Emily, and in that moment everyone in the audience turned their eyes to the young woman standing quietly to the side, tears of emotion rolling down her cheeks. Emily taught me that true courage isn't about never feeling fear, Marcus said, his voice trembling with emotion, but about having the strength to face that fear and do what's right. She stood in front of everyone, risking her reputation and career to defend what she believed in. Marcus stopped again, his voice filled with even more emotion as he continued. And today, standing here with all of you, I want us to remember that this place is not just a center for vocational training. It's a place where anyone, regardless of their skin color or circumstances, can be given an opportunity to change their destiny. Among the crowd, tears began streaming down many faces. An elderly black woman with white hair rose to her feet, her clap filled with emotion. Soon, everyone in the audience stood and joined her, the applause swelling into a heartfelt roar. Emily couldn't hold back her tears of joy. She looked at Marcus, her eyes expressing all the gratitude and love she felt for him. Yet, off to the side, partially obscured by the emotionally moved crowd, a cold figure watched silently. Richard Donovan observed the scene with resentment and bitterness. He hadn't anticipated his plot to destroy Emily, and Marcus would fail so spectacularly. The community's genuine response was proof of his failure, and it only fueled his resolve to find any way possible to crush their dream. Richard clenched his fist, thinking that he would not give up so easily. To him, this battle was far from over, but in that moment he could only stand there helplessly, watching how joy and unity washed over everyone, proving that all his schemes and influence were meaningless in the face of genuine sincerity. On the stage, Marcus bowed in gratitude and then turned toward Emily, extending his hand to her. Emily stepped forward, took his hand, and together they bowed to the audience amid continuous cheers and thunderous applause. "Thank you, Marcus," Emily whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "for giving me the chance to live as my true self." Marcus looked deeply into her eyes and smiled with happiness and fulfillment. "Emily, you are the one who changed everything. Without you, I would never have escaped the darkness of my past." As the two of them descended from the stage, members of the community rushed forward to embrace them, shake their hands, and offer thanks. Every face they encountered radiated hope and faith, affirming that the dream Emily and Marcus had built today had genuinely touched countless hearts. And as the sun gently set on that day, Emily knew they had won the most important battle. Not because they were wealthy or famous, but because they had created something truly meaningful. A home for faith, hope, and courage for anyone who had ever been forgotten. As the final rounds of applause died away, and the crowd slowly departed from the center's grounds, Emily and Marcus quietly sat on the small steps, watching the late afternoon sky turn a deep crimson. The air felt unusually still now, a stark contrast to the earlier excitement, as if time itself wanted to grant this moment exclusively to them. Marcus gently took Emily's hand, his gaze drifting toward the horizon, and spoke in a warm, gentle voice. "You know, Emily, I spent almost my entire life confronting despair. Every time I tried to stand up, I was knocked down again by other people's prejudices and doubts. There were times when I truly believed that hope was a luxury I could never afford." Emily looked at Marcus intently, feeling each ounce of pain in his words. She gave his hand a reassuring squeeze, as though transferring some strength from her own heart. Marcus turned back to look at her, his eyes soft yet sincere, and continued with a voice full of emotion. "But then you appeared, and everything began to change. For the first time in my life, I felt genuine hope. that this life could still be worth fighting for, worth believing in, and worth living to the fullest. Emily offered a small, tearful smile as she heard those deeply heartfelt words. She responded in a voice filled with love and intensity. "Marcus, I never saw giving up my old world as a loss. On the contrary, it was only after stepping away from it that I truly found myself. I used to think that power meant controlling others, but now I understand. True power is having the ability to bring about positive change in other people's lives, and you, Marcus, are the one who taught me that invaluable lesson." Marcus gazed at her for a long moment, so moved that he was briefly speechless. Finally, he gently smiled and placed his warm hand on Emily's cheek. His voice was soft. "I never imagined I could love someone like you, Emily. But now, I can't imagine what my life would be like if you weren't by my side." In that moment, together bathed in golden sunset light, they looked deeply into each other's eyes, realizing that the love they shared had become their greatest source of strength, a force that would carry them through any challenge or trial. However, not far away, on the opposite side of the road, Richard Donovan sat silently in his sleek black car, his cold eyes fixed on Emily and Marcus. In stark contrast to the warm, romantic scene unfolding before him, Richard's heart was roiling with anger and bitter disappointment. He could not bear seeing Emily, the woman he had once scorned and discarded without remorse, find happiness and success in a way he could not control. To Richard, the very existence of the Parker and Reed Institute was not just a personal defeat, but a genuine threat to his standing in the business world. Richard's knuckles whitened as he gripped the steering wheel in frustration. He bitterly acknowledged that all his schemes and sabotage had failed miserably. Yet he refused to give up. Richard knew that as long as Emily and Marcus remained, the dream he had built, the absolute power he had always sought, would never be fully realized. "You think you can easily beat me?" Richard muttered harshly to himself, his gaze locked on the happily seated couple. "Not a chance, Emily. I will never let you win this fight." Unaware of the seething hatred lurking nearby, Emily and Marcus remained absorbed in their private moment, relishing this rare peace after so many tense days. Emily rested her head lightly on Marcus's shoulder, silently watching the streetlights flicker on along the road. "Marcus," Emily whispered, her voice firm and sincere, "no matter what happens from here on out, I will always stand by you." Marcus bent down and kissed her hair, responding tenderly, "Me too, Emily. We've been through too much to reach this day, and I will never allow anyone or anything to take away what we have." They sat in comfortable silence, cherishing this simple happiness they had fought so long to earn. Emily closed her eyes, her heart filled with faith in the future. She knew that although many challenges and dark schemes still awaited them, she and Marcus would face them together and overcome them all. In that moment, Emily realized she had discovered true love, not based on wealth, power, or prestige, but rooted in sincerity and unshakable trust between two people who had chosen to walk a difficult but profoundly meaningful path together. She vowed quietly to herself that no matter what lay ahead, she would always protect and cherish this love, because she now understood that it was the true power that could enable her to change the world for the better. A year after that evening, under the warm summer sun of Colorado, Emily and Marcus once again sat together on the familiar steps in front of the Parker and Reed Institute. But this time, it wasn't a moment of rest after a long day's work. It was a silent reflection on the remarkable journey they had shared. The Institute had now become a proud symbol of the local community, a place where hundreds of young people had found hope, confidence, and stable career skills to build a better life. Vocational classes, life skills workshops, and counseling seminars ran every day, completely transforming a neighborhood that had once been full of doubt and prejudice. Marcus held a photograph from their grand opening, which showed both of them smiling happily in front of a wall emblazoned with the words, "Love Builds." That simple yet powerful image had become the centerpiece of their shared office, reminding them daily of the true value they had created together. "Do you remember when we first hung this picture up?" Marcus asked softly, his eyes full of affection as he looked at Emily. Emily smiled gently, her eyes shining with that cherished memory. "I remember it well. At that moment, I said that no matter how hard the future might be, as long as we have love and courage, we can always build something good." Marcus nodded and carefully set the photo on the table. He turned to hold Emily's hand tenderly. "And now, looking at everything we've achieved, I know you were absolutely right. We've shown everyone that true strength doesn't come from money or power, but from love and sincerity." Outside the institute, teenagers greeted one another cheerfully after class, their laughter and chatter filling the air like a lively symphony. Watching them, Emily and Marcus understood that what they had built wasn't just a building. It was a future brimming with hope and opportunity for a new generation. Meanwhile, in a nearby luxurious office, Richard Donovan had still not abandoned his attempts to sabotage Emily and Marcus. Over the past year, despite his repeated failures, he could not accept that Emily had surpassed all his expectations. Yet this time, his eyes held not arrogance, but a flicker of helplessness and bitterness. He realized that every cruel scheme he had orchestrated could not stop the power of the honesty and courage that Emily and Marcus embodied. Seated at a wide, empty desk, Richard bitterly wondered why all his money and influence couldn't buy true loyalty or genuine love. It was a painful lesson he would carry for the rest of his life. Back at the institute, Emily rested her head gently on Marcus's shoulder, savoring the peaceful late afternoon. Marcus's voice rang out, full of emotion and pride. "You know, Emily, I used to think the future was something to fear, full of uncertainty. But you showed me that if we have love and courage, the future will always be filled with hope." Emily looked up at Marcus, her eyes reflecting profound happiness. "Marcus, we haven't just built a center. We've built a new life, one where everyone is loved and treated fairly." He smiled and wrapped his arms around her, a feeling of joy radiating through both of them. They knew in that moment that no matter what challenges lay ahead, as long as they had each other, they could overcome anything. Suddenly, a young voice called out from the entrance, "Miss Emily, Mr. Marcus." They turned to see Mia, the girl who had once written to Emily, standing there with a radiant, proud smile. Mia had grown so much over the past year. Her eyes now sparkled with confidence and determination. "Mia!" Emily exclaimed, moved to see her. She waved for Mia to come closer. Mia stepped forward and hugged them both tightly, then excitedly announced, "Because of this center, I truly believe I can become a construction engineer. I want to build beautiful, sturdy homes, just like you two built this dream." Emily felt tears well up as she exchanged a look of deep emotion with Marcus. In that moment, they knew all their sacrifices and hard work had been worth it, because they had truly changed lives like Mia's. "I believe in you, Mia," Emily replied softly, her voice full of love and encouragement. "Because you've taught me that when we dare to believe and give our all, we can change the world." The sun slowly dipped behind the distant mountains, and its warm glow bathed the institute in a promise of a bright future. Marcus gently embraced Emily and gazed out at the hopeful horizon. "Emily, This is exactly what we've always dreamed of, a future where true love is the greatest power of all. Emily squeezed his hand, knowing that from this point on, no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together with love and courage, because they had built something truly meaningful, a future filled with hope and a life worth living. Their story is a powerful testament that genuine love and courage can break down every prejudice and open a future full of promise for all of us. Sometimes the most meaningful things are not riches or power, but the ability to love and the bravery to pursue what is right. What about you? Have you ever overcome prejudice or hardship through the power of love? Share your story in the comments below. If you found this story moving and meaningful, remember to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss our next inspiring tales. Thank you for joining us.